Welcome to the Growingupbananas podcast, where we dissect the perks and tribulations of being bananas.
I look so yellow, but feel so white.
My name is Ethan. Alex sits next to me, and in many ways, I sit next to her. What do we have in store today?
Today we'll be talking about our experiences of going to Chinese and Vietnamese school. Sophia will be dropping by later, so let's start peeling away.
Very good. So, like any second or first generation Asian family, we were forced to go to Chinese school from a young age. Didn't go for too long, but we did. Unfortunately, the classes were sorted by, well, it wasn't by grade or age, it was by experience. So for all of us, so it's my mum, my two brothers, myself, and my auntie, the experience was 0. So we're all in the same class. So you've got two aunties, my brothers, and myself, and I was probably like 6 or 7 at the time.
Yeah.
So there's very little I could contribute. You mentioned that you went to Chinese and Vietnamese school as well. What were your experiences?
So, Chinese school, I actually went with my mum as well.
How old were you?
I was probably 9 at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys started quite young.
Yeah. But obviously I can't really remember much of that other than remembering how to say dad in Chinese, which is ba, ba, ba.
So you really learnt nothing.
Yeah, because I can't even remember it. Yeah, but I just remember it sounding similar to how you would say it in Vietnamese, which is ba.
And why did you guys go to Chinese school in particular? Because, I mean, you're a Vietnamese family.
It was at a temple, and my mum also wanted to learn Chinese.
Okay.
But that didn't go too well.
Yeah, fair enough.
Didn't last very long.
Yeah, so for us, the experiences were not great. Let's start with roll call, because roll call is where it all starts, and that was an absolute circus. So firstly, you got 3 of us who were never called by our Chinese names. I still don't know my name to this day. I have it tattooed on my arm. My brothers have theirs tattooed on their arms. But we still don't know our names. So they call our name, and all 3 of us, be like Quan Chi, Sing, or Chung, or whoever it was.
Yeah.
And we'd all 3 put our hands up. The teacher would just laugh every lesson, and it didn't stop. Well, we still don't know our names to this day. But it didn't just stop there. So Mum and her auntie, Evelyn Ai, hopefully she listens to this. But they would call my mum, and it was She Son Yi or something like that. Excuse the pronunciation. And they would both stand up and put their hand up. And the teacher would always laugh and say, "Oh, no, we've got 2 of them today. Very good, very good." So, yeah, roll call was always an absolute circus. So we also had other kids' names who, when you're that age, you just hear sounds. So we had a girl, and her name was like Family or something, and we're like, "Oh, her name's Family."
Yeah.
What's another one? Another kid called, it was like Wong Sui or something, and we were like, "Oh, his name's Bombs Away." And then we also had this other kid whose name was Lupin, which is
Of all names.
Of all names.
Yeah.
And then the other one, which we always used to enjoy, was this guy wasn't even Asian, and his name was Schwank, and he would just sit at the back of the class blowing bubble gum.
Why was he even there?
I don't know, because he also didn't even try to, so he must have, I really don't know why he was there. So that's quite interesting. So talk to us a little bit about your Chinese school a bit more. So you learnt bar. Is there anything that you remember that stands out from that time?
I'm trying to remember like how long it went for. I don't think it went for very long at all. The only thing that I enjoyed about it was maybe after the class, my mum wasn't sitting in there because, having my mum there, I would have to make sure that I was listening and concentrating.
Yeah.
Like the pressure's on you because my mum's there. So it's probably like playing with the kids afterwards. But yeah, I didn't go for too long because...
Yeah, why did you guys stop?
Well, we would travel to the Gold Coast. So we were living in Brisbane at the time, and my grandparents were getting older. Yeah. So my mum made it a priority for us to actually go visit them every weekend. So I guess because we're going to visit family all the time, we just couldn't make time.
And your brothers were probably too young to go at this stage as well?
Yeah, they're too young at the time to go. But did you have any other highlights going to Chinese school?
I mean, to be honest, I probably hated it. Looking back, the last thing you want to do on the weekend, especially when you're in grade 1 or 2, is go to bloody school on a Saturday, and it's just not where you want to be, especially you're learning something you feels just an absolute waste of time. You want to go play sport.
But was it all day?
No, it felt like it. It was probably 2 or 3 hours on a Saturday.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then we'd have to go to church after, so that was a whole Saturday gone.
Yeah.
But the good thing was Evelyn she would bring a lot of snacks. If anyone knows her,
Yeah.
any family listening, she's all about the snacks. So she'd bring snacks for all the kids, and she was probably more of a distraction to the class than anyone else. So you got this older lady with all these young kids just giving out snacks, making jokes, and she was probably more of a distraction than anything. So, but anyway, my mum ended up topping the class, so props to her. She beat out 12-year-olds, 10 to 12-year-olds. But so she took a little bit from it, I guess. I was probably too young to.
How old were you again?
I was like 7 or 8, maybe 6 or 7. I was young.
So you didn't get anything from it? Did you even listen? Or
I had absolutely no idea what was going on. All I heard was these sounds, and I still don't know what they mean. So I'm one of the more useless Asians when it comes to language.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But I've got the tattoos to show for it. But anyway, that all ended up when we came to Australia, fortunately or unfortunately. So tell us a little about Vietnamese school then. So slightly different. You're a bit older. Yeah,
I was a bit older. I was probably 10. So it's actually not that much older if I think about it. But I went to Vietnamese school, again, also on the Saturdays, waking up early. I think it started at 9 and finished. Oh. Yeah, started at 9, finished.
Ours was at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. So
okay.
No, I can see why you didn't like it.
Yeah, so it started at 9, finished at about 1:32.
Yeah.
So it's quite long if you think about it. But I was in a class with my brother, my middle brother, Anthony. Good times. No, but like as kids on a Saturday, you want to sleep in, and then you want to
do anything but go to school.
Yeah, really. Pretty much. I mean, like you know how you said your highlight was one of the highlights, probably auntie like handing out snacks.
Yeah.
Other than roll call, mine was probably lunchtime. But I have a funny story.
Firstly, shout out to Straw Hat Stephen. He was onto something.
Yeah, lunch.
Lunch is the best part of school.
Yeah.
Carry on.
It was just before lunchtime, and the teacher was getting everyone to read something off the board, and you had to read it, like you had to read whatever it was on the board before you could actually go and attend lunch.
I used to hate those.
Yeah, so she'd make us read it out aloud in front of everyone. It's quite embarrassing, especially if you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure my younger brother hardly, I don't think he even realized what was going on half the time.
Well, if you were 10, he's 8 or 7.
Yeah, so I think he was just like, what's going on? Anyway, so the teacher wouldn't let you go to lunch unless you were reading it, read off the board.
Yeah.
So, by this time, everyone had left the class, and it was just me and my brother. And for me, I was fine, but I had to wait for him because I had our lunch money.
Yep.
And my poor brother's just trying to, sit there, and he's like, I can't see. He's telling the teacher, I can't see what's on the board. And she's just arguing with him, getting really heated. And
thinking he's not concentrating or he's just dumb.
Yeah, exactly. And at this point, my brother's just really upset because he's trying to explain, I don't understand what you're, I can't see what's on the board. And
but he actually physically couldn't see.
He physically couldn't see. And he actually really hated going to Vietnamese school because of that experience, because the teacher made him feel like he was really dumb.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think she gave up at some point and let my brother out.
And you found out later that he actually needed glasses. So
exactly.
He physically couldn't see the board.
So he physically couldn't see the board. Yeah.
Well, I can see why he didn't like that experience. And then did you guys end up going for a while after that?
I can't even remember if we went for a full term, because just like Chinese school, going to visit my family on the Gold Coast was always a priority again.
Yeah.
So I felt like we missed quite a lot of classes because we were going to visit them all the time.
Okay.
So we did stop after I'd probably say one term, because there's just no point in us going.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So how is your Vietnamese now? I hear you talk to relatives, mum and dad, and to me it sounds good.
Yeah.
If you had to, and you do it at times in your job, do you ever speak Vietnamese professionally?
No. If I can, I will pretend that I'm not Vietnamese, and I get away with it quite often.
That's pretty handy though.
It is handy, but then there are times when I will have customers coming in talking because they have a problem, and I think they'll just take a shot and they'll talk to me Vietnamese, and I feel bad, so then I will reply in Vietnamese, and I'm like, what have I done?
Yeah,
Like,
and then you become the go-to.
and then they can see me struggling. But I always apologize
So how was your Vietnamese then?
enough to get a conversation going.
Yeah.
Not
Like
enough.
good enough to speak to family and you can at least communicate with them, which is way more than what I can do.
I would like to say yes, but if I think about it, I'm pretty sure half the time it's just me saying yeah, which means yes, and pretending that I can understand what they're saying.
Can you understand that?
No, I can.
Okay. Well,
But-
that's the main thing.
Yeah, but I feel like I can't express how I truly feel. That's the only thing that I would say I would struggle with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like, yeah. That's way better than what me or my brothers can do. Although my brothers actually both studied Chinese at uni, so they should be pretty good, especially if they've actually studied it at an older age. But I guess we can talk to them about that. Yeah.
Wait, on that note, no, Daniel's pretty good when he's drunk.
Yeah, he gets way better when he drinks.
Yeah, his Mandarin's
His
really...
Spanish also picks up when he drinks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's probably just a confidence thing when he drinks. But I guess before we get Sophia on, my last question to you is, we've both had probably mixed to bad experiences of Chinese and Vietnamese school.
Mm-hmm.
Ours didn't last for long. Yours,
I didn't think it would.
you had the fortune of actually talking at home and with family, so your
Yeah.
Vietnamese carried on. Do we want to get our kids into Chinese or Vietnamese school?
I know we didn't enjoy it, but I want to say yes. I think it's a good opportunity for both of our children to be able to keep that heritage.
Well, it gives them just something else as well, right?
Yeah.
It's like we've spoken to a few people, and just having another language just opens up a whole nother pathway, not just for work or professional or anything like that. It's just another part of your brain that you're activating, and it's probably something I'm definitely lacking.
No, I'd love to be able to just go to Vietnam and speak Vietnamese freely. And it's not that I can't, it's just every time I'm there, I just automatically close up and assume that they're going to think my Vietnamese is so bad
Yeah.
and they're going to judge. So I think that's why I probably just end up speaking English or pretend that I'm from a different country or like...
Well, that can sometimes be to your advantage when it comes to bargaining and things like that, or if
That
they're
does.
talking shit about you.
No, it does.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, which is good. But it would be nice to learn another language other than what my family could speak as well, like Chinese.
Yeah.
Especially,
So I think I probably want to try have a crack at it as well when things quiet down with kids and things like that.
you can go with Olivia and Charlie.
Well, I was going to say the last thing on that is possibly the way that we were taught it. So it was like, say, 9 a.m. on a Saturday. Who wants to do that unless you're playing sport?
Yeah.
So there's other ways to do it now, whether it's YouTube or, maybe we can get someone who comes over here to
Or
our
we
place.
go and live in the country. We go live in Vietnam.
There's many different ways
China.
to do it. So hopefully it doesn't our kids aren't as useless as us when it comes to speaking the
Talking
native
about-
tongue.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. And let's get Sophia on. It's going to be a really exciting chat to hear her perspective on everything, and really appreciate her time and her efforts to come on. So let's do it.
Yay, let's do it.
So very, very lucky to have Sophia join us today. Sophia is great auntie to our kids. So so I guess let's start at the beginning. So early memories. Can you tell us a little about where you're from and I guess how you've got here?
So everything I remember is pretty much what's been told, or stories been told to me. I don't really actually remember visually anything particularly. Anything before 3, I don't think I remember. So going to West End School was pretty much my first memory of the area and of Australia. There was a lot of Vietnamese around West End, is what I remember. Not really understanding the language, and having no friends for the first few days, starting school. I don't know where it was, South Brisbane or something like that. I remember that, the first day of school, I hid it under the desk, drinking my milk bottle. Still. That I remember. That's all I remember, really. And, yeah.
Wait, so how old were you?
Grade 1. So 4, 5.
Okay.
And I guess if we take a step back, so you were born in Vietnam,
Yeah.
and how did you, or you don't remember, but how did your family end up in Australia?
So I was born in Vietnam. We started the trip on the boat, I'm assuming when I was 1.5. Mum told of stories where we had to hide in the boat at the dock until it was midnight, until they could leave the bay, because at that time there was no guards and things like that. Or they brought out the guards or something like that, so that we could pass through the waters. And they would dose the kids up with sleeping tablets. And apparently I was dosed with a lot of tablets.
Oh, wow.
Luckily I didn't die. Just to keep them quiet and not cry, because it was hot and stuffy under the boat. I don't think the boat was a small fishing boat, so it's probably a storage area that we were under. And there was like 100 people in the boat. So that's like that. So we stayed there until midnight. They go out, and then you're at sea, tossed in the big ocean, and the boat would break and almost capsize. And then luckily we were found by a mining ship or something like that, or some sort of big ship. I don't know what they were.
Do you know where the ship was headed to?
We were pretty close in Malaysia.
Yeah.
So they called the Bidong Islands. Haven't looked that up or where it is. But we were close to there, so they gave us enough fuel to keep going because we ran out of fuel. But at the end, they reassessed the ship and they said there's no way you could even go further, even with fuel. So they actually were going to pull us along to the island. But then even then, the boat didn't hold.
Oh, no.
So they got us all on the ship.
Oh, wow.
So they pulled all the people onto the ship. So kids and women were first. And I were told that they were really nice. I don't remember anything. I was given apples and cakes and lots of food. They came and check on you. They bring you to the ship, make you sure that you've had food and drinks. And so I went to sleep, and then they took you to the island. And
do you know if the boat was it headed for Australia, or was it just to try and get out anyway?
It was pretty much just leaving the country.
Yeah.
It wasn't particularly heading anywhere. They didn't have compasses or anything really, so they were just leaving and hope for the best.
And what sort of time period was this? Was this post-war? I guess it would have been.
It would have been post-war.
And everyone, all the locals were just trying to just get out to avoid communism, or what was?
I don't really know very much about the Vietnam War. I guess I can't block out that part of history because I don't want to know about it.
Yeah.
It's also very confusing when I try to understand, because there's the Chinese, the Americans, the French, and Russians, the Japanese. They were all in the country doing their own thing, agenda. And, I had no idea what was going on. But all I can understand is that they were poor, and a lot of the guys were drafted. So that was the main motivator for my family to leave, because all my uncles were drafted, and they didn't want to go to war or go into the army, because oftentimes you come back disabled or whatever.
And then have you had a chance to speak to, I guess, your mum or anyone who was involved, or are they trying to block it out?
No, my mother regularly tells us at the very start, not anymore, but at the start a lot of stories about what happened, what she knew, what she heard on the island.
Yeah, crazy. And you can remember the island or anything that was...
I don't remember anything. Yeah, I would have been 1.5, so I really don't remember. Mum says that to go through from where they were hiding on the country to the boat, they had to also hide and walk through like marshlands for hours in the dark. And then there's like potholes, like lakes and little potholes. And then my auntie fell in the pothole. She was carrying me.
Okay, so you've retold us a story of what your mum's told you about coming to Vietnam. Was there anyone else that came with you guys by boat?
Yes, so there was my auntie and my uncle, and also a lot of cousins that I know there were, and my grand auntie went, and her son and wife and child. So that's our family went like that.
Oh wow! I honestly just thought it was just you and your mum and maybe an uncle. I didn't realize that it was.
So the situation was you had to pay the ship master money in gold bars.
Yeah.
So he said to Mum that, look, it will cost you 2 gold bars to get on the boat. But if you want to call anyone else and try to raise the funds for yourself, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. Tell them you want, say, 5 gold bars, and then ask 3 or 4 people, and then at least you've got money to cover yourself.
Yeah.
So that's why she asked the cousins, because they had a lot of money.
Yeah.
So she asked them, like, I don't know how much she asked for, but it was enough to pay for her, my uncle, my auntie to come along.
And what do the typical immigrants leave with? Do you take clothes, gold, whatever, jewelry, whatever you can actually sell?
Yeah. So anyone who had money would definitely bring a lot of gold.
Yeah.
So a lot of gold with them. You would want to pack food and water and clothes. But for our family, what happened was the boat was too heavy. So before they even left the dock, we had to, they made us throw our luggage away. So unfortunately, my auntie, who was not always, she was traumatized before the trip. So she wasn't all there at the time we left. So she was looking after the food. So when they said throw away everything, she threw all the food and water away as the clothes. So by the time we left, we had no food and water. So it was a bad trip to start off with. But luckily, my cousins, they were smarter. They kept their food, and they gave us a little bit just
to ration it out. Yeah.
Crazy. So then you spoke briefly about early life in Australia. So you hid under the desk and you're trying to find a milk bottle at school and all that.
Yeah, I think I brought one with me. I think my mum packed one with me because it was pretty normal for her to pack for lunch a milk bottle.
Now, in grade 1, could you speak English at this point?
Grade 1, I could remember putting sentences together already, so picked up pretty quickly somehow.
How was that? Because I know your parents, and so the English isn't great, but understandable.
We predominantly just spoke Vietnamese at home, so I had no exposure to English until I went to school. But I guess they had ESD, like ESL teachers or something like that to help you. I don't remember going, but I guess there was. But I think you just picked it up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Most kids do.
Did you have a Vietnamese teacher at that school?
No, there were none. Not West End. When I went to West End for grade 1, yes. But when I went to South Brisbane, I think it was, there weren't.
See? Because I was in the last podcast, I was just saying that, my teacher is Vietnamese at West End. So I spoke to her only in Vietnamese.
But that was the ESL teacher, not the main teacher.
Oh, my grade 1 teacher was Vietnamese.
And then they assumed that you couldn't speak English.
Then they assumed that I couldn't speak English.
Speak Vietnamese to the teacher.
Yeah. Okay, so you went to a different school and then they didn't have...
Yeah, they didn't have any... Look, I don't think there were any Vietnamese at all in grade 1. I mean, in kindy and maybe grade 1, I don't know. When I went to West End, obviously then there were a lot more Vietnamese, but I don't think I was friends with Vietnamese people at that point in time. Mostly Indians, I think.
So how do you think you picked up your English, like other than from school, especially if at home? I'm assuming you were just talking, like you just said that you were talking Vietnamese all the time. So then how would you have been able to pick up English if you weren't hearing it at home?
I don't know, I guess you have to. You just do. At that age, you're just pliable enough to do it, I guess.
So family, friends, did they speak English or anything?
No, all our family friends were Vietnamese, very much. There was no exposure to any Australian culture. We didn't even watch Neighbours when it first started. I didn't even know about it.
Because we spoke about it the other week, and we're talking about the first time we actually realised there were different races. So if you picture yourself as a kid, you grow up, there's just family, friends, and for us it was mainly Asian people, so other Chinese people. And then at some point you click and you say, well, this person's a different colour.
Yeah.
And you start to realise race. Did you realise that young, or was it actually when you went to school and you're like, these people are different?
Yeah, I don't think I realised race until probably grade 4, and that's when I changed school again to the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
But when you're younger, you know something's off, but you don't know what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just pretty much, you know that you're different, you know that you're off, but you just don't recognise race.
Yeah.
So grade 4, so when we were talking to Sam about it, he realised it when he was, I think, in high school. So
it's a lot later.
Yeah, it's a lot later than everyone else. For me as well, it was probably around there, like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Maybe younger. I guess then looking, so family life, you know, your family came over here with whatever they had in the boat.
Yeah.
Probably no formal education in terms of for Australian standards. Yeah. What was life like? Did you guys have to just find work and just do whatever you could to get through?
I know that when we first came to Australia, they put you into, like, I guess, a refugee camp. They offered you English studies and some sort of a vocational education if you wanted to take it. And Mum was young enough to do that, and she was offered that. But then because she had me as a child, and I must have fallen sick a million times over, she had to skip a lot of the English classes.
Yeah.
So she couldn't get to the level of English that she needed for a job. A lot of other people who were with her in the same class, they actually finished the classes and they had enough English to do work, like in pizza shops and takeaways and whatever.
Yeah.
But Mum, she had me, so for her, she didn't work really. But I guess she survived by making clothes. She did a lot of sewing, and then she sold it between her friends, and she did okay with that. Or you just they had an industry where they give you clothes and you sew bits and pieces of it.
Can I just say, your mum was an amazing seamstress. So just so Ethan knows, we actually, growing up, Athena and I, so Athena is Sophia's youngest sister. We're similar in age. They would always dress us up in the same clothes. And it was clothes that Auntie would make for me and Athena.
Yeah.
Yeah, like always, like the nicest dresses, like party dresses, like, so, and Auntie was
Yes.
able to like sew anything.
Pretty much, yeah. But so growing up, she made all our clothes pretty much. We never bought clothes, I don't think. She would make all our clothes.
And then you had a shop too.
Yeah. Then they moved on to open shops, and that was okay for a bit.
Yeah.
But the funny thing was, like, she used to make this funny pajama-like looking thing, but it was all the hit and the rage. And I don't know, she must have sold over thousands of them when she was in West End. And 20 years later, going to Vietnam, there was still a lady wearing it.
Oh,
Oh,
really?
You should have paid
I
them
picked it
that.
out because obviously I know my mum's designs, and no one would make it other than mum. But she was still wearing it 20 years later. And
That's
so I had to take a
amazing.
photo with her.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And
So,
then
yeah.
tell us about school. So you're learning English. You know, meeting other people, different races. You said you changed schools a couple of times. What was school like for you? Were there many other, I suppose, cultures, or was it predominantly white schools that you went to?
West End, there was a lot of cultures, so that was quite easy then to may have friends and things like that, so it was okay. But when I went to the Gold Coast, there was a different thing all over again. There weren't many Asians at all on the Gold Coast. I think maybe like 3 or 4 families, Vietnamese families at most, on the Gold Coast. So most of my friends at that point in time were Australians, and it was fine in grade 4 and grade 5. And then I moved to Benoa, and then that's when you saw more mixture of Asians. And that was a little bit harder. That time was a bit hard for me to make friends because it was really awkward at that point in time.
As in you were awkward or
I
just...
couldn't fit in. Like, even clothes-wise, obviously Mum made a lot of our clothes.
Yeah.
And then when she had the store, she would dress us in adult clothes because that's what the clothes came from the store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I never knew pants and T-shirt. And that was the norm for kids, right? So you go to school dressed up to the nines. And then it's just T-shirts and pants. That's all you need to do for pre-dress day. So then you start noticing, oh, my clothes are different.
Yeah.
This is different. That is different. That's when you really notice the difference.
Yeah.
So I guess grade 6, 7, it was the worst times.
And then you have kids come over to play or whatever it is, and you're eating rice or noodles, and then
Yeah.
it's even another difference when it
Going
comes to
school,
food. And
yes.
things.
School lunches were hard as well because you repacked dumplings and rice and food that smelled different.
Yeah.
So they'll go, ew, yuck, that smells disgusting. And,
As a kid, you take offense to it. I was exactly the same.
Yeah.
Slightly less severe, but yeah, we'd take like a barrel,
Yeah.
and then it steams up your whole lunchbox, and it's condensation and stuff, and then the kids are like,
ew,
"What are you eating?"
Yeah, pretty
Like, I
much.
eat
Bringing
this every week.
durian in a
oh,
lunchbox.
Can't imagine.
Yeah. But you learn to not eat those things anymore and just bring a sandwich and fruit
Yeah.
and tiny teddies.
So during that era, then Sophia. So this is, I don't want to talk about your age or anything, but this is in the 90s. So probably before there was a lot of immigration. I think a lot of
Yeah.
Japanese were on the Gold Coast around that time, so I didn't come then.
Yeah. There were people in the cities, but they didn't, in school terms, they weren't going to school. The
Yeah.
Japanese weren't going to school. They were just businesses and
Yeah.
tourists and that.
What was it like back then? Was it like you said, you struggled from like sort of grade 7 to 10?
Yeah.
Was it because of the race, or was it just because maybe you were slightly different?
We were different, really. Everything we thought, we ate, we wore, we were different. So, and not understanding that we were different for a while was difficult. Until you know that you're different, then you can observe what's the norm, then you can adapt yourself to the norm. But as a kid, you just get dressed with whatever you want your parents give you. You just don't know. And then once you identify it, then you can change or request change, and then you're okay. But there was, with the Japanese tourists, that's when racism was the worst at the peak on the Gold Coast, because obviously we were suddenly flooded with a bunch of Asians and a bunch of tourists who did things differently as well. Taking photos everywhere on the streets was pretty strange for us.
And then lump you in with it
peace
and
sign.
assume that you guys are part of it. Because it had there's like a $1 property or something scheme that they had. I think one of my clients told me. So it was in the 90s to boost Australian immigration, particularly for the Japanese. They were offering like $1 properties on the Gold Coast. Don't even $1 or $2, but it was nothing, and that's how a lot of them actually came and now own a lot of quality real estate.
I just know that they came to Australia because of the land and space in the Gulf.
Yeah.
Because in Japan, the idea of a backyard doesn't exist.
Yeah. Now that you're a mature woman, looking back, is there any advice you'd give to yourself then to, I guess, cope with it, or someone in a similar situation?
I was reflecting now because my daughter, obviously, she's second or third generation, whatever it is, in Australia. She's been brought up differently again. She doesn't identify as Vietnamese. I don't identify as Vietnamese because, I suppose your home is Australia.
Yeah.
But I do identify with Vietnamese culture, but not as a Vietnamese. But for her, it's even harder because she doesn't even know where she is.
Yeah.
So, but then my husband, who's entirely Vietnamese, he has an expectation that she has to adopt Vietnamese culture. And then that's when there's an issue between me and my husband. Because I let her relax and just do things differently because I've been through a different situation, but he hasn't seen any of that.
Yeah, exactly. You've lived through it. You realise that, your kids will probably need to fit in a little bit more and embrace the Australian side. So we can talk more about Tara later.
Was it your question? I forgot.
No, that's it. It was just what advice would you give to yourself trying to get through that if you were able to?
Going back to myself, I think just have to be confident with what you have, I guess.
Maybe proud of what you have at that time, and now knowing you realise that it's something that's important.
Yeah, it's not that different. Like back then it was different, but now you look around, Asian culture's everywhere. The food, everyone knows what a bao is now.
Yeah.
It's cool, it's but 10 years ago it wasn't, but now it's cool.
You mentioned that there was hard times. Is there anything that, well, other than you like realizing like, oh yeah, I kind of stand out a little bit, was there anything else that made it easier for you or helped you change or made you feel more like at peace?
Yeah, I think you just have to disregard, walk away, because there were always going to be racist comment, ching chong, pulling the eyes. There was common things. You go to Australia Fair and who'll be shouting, "Go home!"
Yeah.
But you just have to ignore them and walk away, and not feel put down by it. Just thinking they're the idiots, obviously, and you're not.
It's just ignorance, and I guess in terms of friends, then did you gravitate towards other Asians to just feel at home?
You do gravitate because you've got the same kind of family background, family upbringing. They would understand that you'd watch Chinese, series. You know what they're talking about. Chinese singers. Because at that time there wasn't any Vietnamese music and media or anything like that in Australia, but it was mostly Hong Kong stuff. So I gravitated towards the Hong Kong friends because we listen to the same music, watch the same TV shows,
eat the same foods, things like that. Yeah.
How did you understand it if it's in Cantonese?
It was all dubbed into Vietnamese.
Oh right, all those Vietnamese video stores. Yeah. Do you know they were like?
I can only imagine the pirating might have been at a pretty rough level.
It was totally pirated, and I would have known that at that point in time.
Yeah,
just things that you watch.
And then all the music shows.
Like
with this two.
The only thing that, it wasn't very Vietnamese really, was because it's Paris One Night and Asia, the two main Vietnamese music, but that was really from America and from France, so it wasn't totally Vietnamese as such. When I got to university, that's when I was exposed to more Vietnamese music from Vietnam, which is a total different ball game.
Yeah. So I just remember you always, do you know Lay Dum?
Yeah.
He was like this Vietnamese singer guy that Sophia had like a big crush on. Is that what inspired you to get married to a Vietnamese guy? Guy?
No, at all.
I was like,
sorry, Lay Dum, but it wasn't that.
Because Vincent looks kind of like Lay Dum, wouldn't you say?
Oh, you reckon?
I'm sure he'd take that.
Yeah, would he? It's a joke.
I think it was rebellion, really. Growing up, the parents would say, you have to marry a Vietnamese person. And I said, no, I'm marrying a French guy because I like French and did French immersion. So I went, no, I'm marrying a French guy. I'm going to France and marry a French guy. That didn't happen. And then, I don't know why I married my husband. I guess
why? Nice.
I traveled to Vietnam and I guess I appreciate the culture a bit more.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I know why. During uni, again, I gravitated at uni towards Vietnamese, trying to learn more about Vietnam as such. And so I was hanging out with a lot of the international Vietnamese students, and that's how I met my husband. Just trying to, you're curious. So what do you think about certain things? What do you do? Just, I guess, curiosity. And that's,
And then when you first started, or when, let's say when he was courting you, did you guys communicate in Vietnamese? Or was it English?
With all other Vietnamese friends, I spoke in Vietnamese, and my Vietnamese was really great at that point in time. But my husband, he spoke in English
Okay.
because he was trying to learn English when I was here.
Yeah.
And I was the best person because I obviously Vietnamese, but grew up in Australia, so he wanted to learn and practice his English with me.
Let's take a quick step back. So, in terms of school and upbringing and things like that, so were there any things that your parents wouldn't let you do because of the culture? So, what if it's you couldn't go to certain camps or things like that?
Yeah, there were lots. Well, first of all, sleepovers. We never had sleepovers. I do remember everyone having a birthday party, everyone doing a sleepover. At 12 o'clock, I was pulled home. Then one day, I went to my friend's house, and Mum goes, yeah, you can sleep over. So it was all good to go, and then my grandfather calls my mum to pick me up in the middle of the night. I'm going, damn. Couldn't go to... Camps were okay. 2-day camps were fine, but you couldn't do any ski trip, Japan trip, marine trip, Numia trip, and all those things that's away from... almost away from their possible control. They wouldn't let you go.
Do you think it was because you guys were Vietnamese, or was it because you were a girl?
It was both. Vietnamese girl was the reason.
So if you had a brother, do you think he would have been able to?
A brother, he probably would be able to go, yeah.
Yeah. Because we had this chat with Alex, and she basically pointed out that she felt a little bit, I guess, suppressed in her upbringing, but her brothers had a totally different experience because they were guys.
I'm just going to add as well. So with camp, growing up, my mum and dad weren't actually happy with the idea of me going to camp. And if it were... Yeah, but it was because Sophia actually convinced my mum and dad to let me go.
I don't remember that.
I know you don't. Do you remember? You don't remember? Yeah, I remember.
I was pretty rebellious. So anything that they say no, I would go against at that point in
Yeah.
time.
So Sophia's like one generation above me. So I guess for you, you've experienced all of it. And I think you overheard, and I was like, oh, but like why? Like I'd be questioning, like why can't I go? And then I think Sophia actually... told my mum, no, like you should, it's good exposure, or like, she's with the school. And I think that's the reason why my parents actually, my mum also eased up on the idea of me going on these trips.
Yeah.
Because it's not like I was going out of the country. It was a camp at school too, like camping overnight at school.
I think it's culture, but I don't think it's the culture that causes that. I think it's more the fear, because they've gone through themselves, the parents have gone through so much. And there's always a lot. It was dangerous times for them, but for us, it's not dangerous times. For them, they lived through very dangerous times. So they're overprotective more so than anyone else. So the idea of their daughter possibly being raped or kidnapped is kind of common in those for them.
Yeah, and so for us and the way we've grown up, you're like, that's ridiculous, but it's something that they're carrying through with them, the scars, I suppose. Yeah. And then Sophia, you got 2 younger sisters. Would you say things could have let up a little bit for them? Was it we need to really not mould, but protect Sophia as much as we can, and then the 2 younger daughters came through and got a bit easier? Or was it maybe you, like how you helped Alex?
I think my middle sister still had it like me, because we were close in age. We were only 3 years apart, so she went through the exact same thing as I did. But my little sister, who's 12 years apart, she's got a totally different upbringing. Maybe not at the start, but or maybe a little bit at the start, I guess. But now that she's in her, I think she's in her 20s, but she's in her 30s. She's got a total different upbringing.
But would you say it's still strict in some ways, though?
She has to carry, because her upbringing is different now. My mum has to relax and let go of her customs to accommodate for the new younger generations.
Yeah.
But then she has to go through the guilt of she has guilt that she has to live with, because it's not what the family did. Or not what the family does. And so she has to carry a lot of burden from that end. My mother, on the other hand, is accepting but not happy.
Yeah.
With that, she feels like I have to relinquish, or I have to let go of my values that's so important to me, but I have to let it go, so I'm not happy with that.
Yeah.
So I often tell my mum, look, Mum, she does it that way. she's not bad. She's not a bad girl.
Yeah.
It's just the way things are. And in any other culture, in any other person's mind, that's perfectly fine and normal and good. But in your mind, everything that she does is bad. And she feels bad. My mother feels bad, and it goes on to my sister.
When you say that, like, just, is it for your mum? Is it your mum's values, like the way that she was brought up?
Yeah. It was the way she's brought up and the way she wants to bring us up.
And when I say, like, sorry, I was just going to say, like, the way that she's brought up, I should say it's like the way that Vietnamese people were brought up, right?
Yeah. It's not, well, you look in Vietnam right now, that's definitely not what's happening in Vietnam at this point in time. So what her values she holds are from the 1960 values.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify, like, if it was just, like, the way that she's brought up, or do you think it's, like, the way that Vietnamese people were generally brought up was quite rigid and...
Yeah, I think, it's just, general all Vietnamese are brought up that way.
Yeah.
Back in that time.
Because even talking to my mum, we had a chat the other night, and she as well, not Vietnamese, Chinese background, she wasn't allowed to do the same things as well. Camps, sleepovers, if there was a trip and, it was a friends group, even when she was, I guess, in her teens, maybe early 20s even, unfortunately her father passed away quite young, so her brother raised her quite a lot, and he wouldn't let her go to friends trips and things like that. Or if she went, she had to stay with the relative who was in that city.
Yeah.
And fortunately with the Chinese, there's relatives everywhere. So there's always someone. Yeah.
I remember that my middle sister, a little bit more relaxed than I was, but I didn't have the same issues. But she wanted to go away with she was engaged, and she wanted to go away to a trip to Melbourne with her, I guess her fiance. But the whole family had to come. But not our family, but their whole family had to come, and they had to sleep in one room with the parents. They weren't allowed to sleep by themselves. They had to sleep with the in-laws.
Damn, that's a romantic getaway. But it's crazy. And then that sort of pressure, like sort of what Alex was touching on, is that pressure from like your mum really wants to hold on to it, or is it family pressure, like face and the optics of it all? Have you ever thought about that?
I think she probably should hold on to her value quite strongly, but there's also an element of it will embarrass her if anyone else knows, everyone else hears. I think there is, but then she's living so far away from. Generally, they would say that the public would know, like the other Vietnamese friends and family would know, but then she doesn't associate with them that much. So I don't know why she's worried.
Like face. So this is all for face, right?
Yeah.
Especially, I guess, in Vietnam.
I don't think it's only it's two-part.
Yeah.
I think the face would be maybe 30%, and the rest of it will be her values.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, like, I guess in Vietnam, they always say, like, people know each other's businesses.
Yeah.
Which is probably why in your mum's head, she's like, oh, if people hear about this, they're going to think that I raised her this way. Or, So it's just, whereas, like, here in Australia, it's so spread out and I don't know. I feel like
we don't talk as much. I think it's quite common in Asian culture to talk and gossip. Or maybe it's not, but they tend to gossip and they do exaggerate the gossip quite a bit. And once it's out there, it's out there.
You say like the Vietnamese community, but it was like within our family, things get exaggerated.
There's a lot of Chinese or Vietnamese
whisper.
Suddenly they've done something ridiculous when it's nothing.
Yeah.
So
I mean, common in every culture, I guess. Now I reflect, but yeah.
I think also if we take a step back, it's that first wave of Vietnamese that came. There probably weren't that many, as you said, and they all kind of intermingled, and the whispers and all things went around that. Now there's a lot more families, so everyone kind of just worries about themselves or their own families. Yeah,
it's more spaced out for sure, because the community was predominantly West End when I was growing up, and then Inala or Durack or whatever that. Dara.
So Sophia, you're talking before about like Vincent, and I guess also how you sort of rebelled a little bit. Do you think that was a result of the strict parenting that you had, that you said, stuff this, I want to do what I want to do?
Yeah, there's a lot of control. Asian parents can't relinquish control, I think. They want to control every element of your upbringing. And I didn't like control at any age. Even now, my parents, I've had to get in trouble for expressing that concern. So you want to be your own self. You want to you need to be your own self because you need to change to adapt into the environment. You need to.
Yep.
But they maybe don't really realise that because they don't associate with Westerners that much. So I guess you have to rebel against what they told you to do. And I did. But now, having said that, I wouldn't agree with any of the stuff that I rebelled against.
What did you rebel against?
Yeah, is there an example or two that you can share with us?
Yeah.
They say that you can't dress that way. And I'll dress whichever way I want. Not that I would dress... You can't wear anything short. You can't wear anything showy. But by choice, I wouldn't do that anyway. But I would say, no, I'll wear whatever I want.
Was it harder for you because you, growing up, I know that you weren't just living with like mum, dad. You were living with mum, dad,
extended family,
aunties, uncles.
Were your parents there for a bit as well?
Yeah, grandma, grandpa, which is my great grandparents. So you had a lot of eyes on you growing up. But did you feel that pressure, like from the aunties, the uncles, your cousins, and then your grandparents, or was it mainly just predominantly from your mom and dad?
Well, when we were living together with that extended family, that was another thing. Your friends comes over to your house and they're going, why is like everyone everyone here? There's a bedroom and the bedroom has like 10 people in it or something like that. Yeah. You have to explain it and you can't explain it. You say, oh no, they're visiting. They're always visiting.
Yeah, always visiting.
Yeah, that was, yeah. No, there was a lot of eyes. You do get feedback left, right and centre all the time. And growing up, I kind of just blocked out a lot of that. So yeah, there was a lot of feedback.
Well, I'm just gonna say, looking back, I would not be able to tell that you ever rebelled, because to me, I always thought, oh, it's Sophia,
model.
like the model child in our family. You were the eldest of pretty much your generation, so yeah, I would just look up to you. I'm like, oh, like my mum would always be like, oh, look at Sophia, she studies really hard, she's going to uni, she's got a scholarship. Did you like the fact that you were able to find freedom moving out of home after high school to Brisbane? Because you were so, like, I say so far away, but you were like an hour away.
It wasn't hardly moving out. Yeah, there was lots of freedom. When the first day, you move out, you go to uni, and then you think, oh no, I got to call mum, I'm going to be home late. Then you realise, oh, there's no one home. It's great.
Yeah.
And going back after being away from home so long and moving back to live with them again, that was difficult too, because I'm so used to, you just come and go as you please. You don't have to tell anyone.
Yeah.
So I go out. Mum goes, why don't you tell me where you're going? Like, I haven't told you where I've been for the last 3 years. Why do I have to tell you now? I went to the shops.
That's a struggle that Ethan can understand and relate to now that we're back in with the parents.
They're with us now. Well, because I same as you, moved out pretty much as soon as I could, 17, and then fortunately mum and dad were able to move to Brisbane as well. And then so I was like 11, 12 years without them.
Yeah.
And then it's suddenly, what are you doing? And then now with kids as well, for us, there's no pressure and it's all well-meaning, but it's, have they eaten? Kind of like they're nudging us, telling us you should feed them, things like that. And it's just teething, but we're getting there.
No, it's hard. Yeah, when you have your own child, then that's a whole new level. Because they bring up with the knowledge of way back when. So if they have like a milky tongue, whatever, it's definitely thrush. Or they don't call it thrush, they call it, I don't know what they call it. And they want to wash the mat out with their pee.
Oh, yeah.
That's a common Vietnamese
Does that actually
thing.
work?
I never did it. I said, no.
I'm not going to try that.
It's milk deposit. And then you have to fight. So, the rebel never stops.
Well, with us, it's the peppermint oil, the Four Seasons, like Chinese medicated oil. And my mum's sore, itchy bite oil, bruise oil, and their throat sore and put it in the tea or something. So
so when I say a rebel, it's like, they want to apply that onto me and give me the wipe over or whatever it is. And it's, nah, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in religion. Religion's another thing. I would say they're obviously very superstitious, and I've said, nah, I don't want to hear any of that. It's still superstition.
So on that then, Sophia, I know you guys are very involved in the do you call it a temple? Yeah.
It's a school. So it's a school. It's mind science school, but with the guiding principles are pretty much Buddhism, because our family are Buddhists. So the guiding principles are Buddhism, but it's a school. We call it mind science because it's not really. We're not. Oh, you can probably explain it better than I can what mind science.
Yeah. So I guess
is.
how did you get into it, and what does it mean to you?
majority of Vietnamese are Buddhist by default. They might not practice or they might not believe, but they are Buddhist. They call themselves Buddhist. So every say New Year's, you definitely have to go to the temple. It's just what you do. So Buddhism just underlies. If someone dies, the funeral has to be done in the temple. So growing up, we still gravitated towards temples and visiting temples on certain occasions. We were, I don't know why, I think it was of Sandra's father, particularly, when he was more Tibetan Buddhism. So he kind of led the family towards Tibetan Buddhism. And he...
That's my dad. Or my grandpa.
Your grandpa, sorry.
I was going to say, my dad.
I'm thinking you're just Julie now.
Yeah, my grandpa.
Your grandpa. So we somehow were more exposed to Tibetan Buddhism. I never liked Vietnamese Buddhism. You say that because when you go there, all they do is chant in a language that I don't understand, really.
Yeah. Yep.
And they'll give you teachings which were simply, be good to your parents, be a model citizen, all the really boring ethical stuff that I really don't want to listen to for hours on end. So when we went to Tibetan Buddhism, because it's based mostly Australians, basically the followers, I guess you say, they're Australian. So I felt comfortable going to that space because everything was in English. All the prayers were in English. I could understand what they were saying. Yeah. And it's a different take on Buddhism, basically.
So I don't know much about it, but it sounds like it's more of a modern, a modern version of Buddhism. So it's a bit more inclusive, a bit more with times. Like you say, the old Tibetan style is just chanting and all those sorts of things.
Yeah. I don't know. The Tibetan style Buddhism is totally different to other Asian Buddhism, I think, because they start as it's a school. Buddhism is basically school for them, so they have very academic structure. Whereas Vietnamese Buddhism is more a second part of your culture.
Yeah.
So it's quite a different thing. One's academic and one's just morals.
So there's two more things in Sophia. So we touched on it briefly before. Expectations of being an Asian woman. So Alex kind of said, before you were the model, citizen, model cousin. Did you ever feel that you couldn't? You said you rebelled and you had your freedom, but did you ever feel that you just couldn't take it that step further, and give it all up and go move to Africa and that sort of thing? Did you feel pressure to have to stick on a certain path?
Yeah, definitely. Because my passion was language. So French was my passion. France was my passion. So I bugged my parents to go do an exchange to France in high school because there was an exchange program that you can go for 3 years to France.
Geez.
And I wanted to go to that so much and I wasn't allowed to go. So I would have probably taken a different path if I had gone on exchange. I would have probably followed language. But then, back then they would say, where's language going to take you? What are you going to do with language? So I took the science path because you could do something with it.
And then,
I was going to say, you say you chose science, but do you think it was also an Asian thing? Because, as Asian parents, they always want you to be a doctor or...
Yeah, definitely.
Doctor.
They want to be a doctor, full stop.
Yeah.
So, of course, I took the science path thinking that I perhaps want to be a doctor one day, but I'm never built to be a doctor. And as you pursue it, you know that you're not built that way.
Yeah.
So you don't pursue it.
And then now with Tara, your daughter, she's now getting to that age where it's not necessarily picking a path or anything like that, but she's well on her educational way. Yeah. Obviously, education is important for yourself and Vincent.
Yeah. So that's a debate that's happening at home at the moment between me and my husband. So being brought up to follow a certain pathway, like become a doctor, to do something successful, is still there, even though I don't think it's the greatest path to pursue. And I say to myself, you just want her to do what she wants to do, so why do you push her to study? Why do you push her to excel academically? And yet there's another part that's always pushing her, even though I know structurally that's not necessary. Just need to have a good ATAR mark because, if she chooses to do whatever she chooses to do, because I'm not pushing her to be a doctor or a dentist or anything that's in demand. So it doesn't really require a good ATAR. So realistically, I don't need to push her, and yet I still push her.
Is it because you wanted to have options, essentially?
I think I want to give her the best opportunity that I didn't have, basically. So I don't want to... I know that there was a lot of things that other friends had. Now that I look back, like tutoring, I didn't go to tutoring. So there was times at school, you go to school and going, how did you know how to solve the maths problem? They've never taught you that in class. And I'm not dumb, but I didn't know how to solve it. How can you solve it? And I asked them and go, oh yeah, we do tutoring on the side. And makes sense. Okay. And now, obviously, I push her to do tutoring because I knew that that's something I didn't have, and that was a difference in class.
And is that also why you pushed Athena to go to tutoring?
Yeah. That's why you guys all got to go to
We
Kumon.
all got to go tutoring.
Sounds like you hated it, though.
That was me.
We did not like that, but thanks, Sophia. But in saying that, thank you, because tutoring does help. In hindsight, it's always
something to help you if you take it on.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
but I mean, when we're going to the tutoring, we're like, great, more extra fun times for us studying during the holidays.
So now I put time into tutoring, with the background that I had, and then, but I tell him to stop. If she doesn't enjoy it, just let her not do it.
Yeah.
At least that option is there for me to go through. Other parents probably go, no, you have to do it in full stop.
Okay, well that's good. At least you know that. Well, at least it's good to know that at least you know
where to stop, right?
Yeah, when to stop.
Yeah. And also with the private schooling situation, we've been thinking about it on and off. My husband, being an economic person, he's doing the pros and cons financially. He's saying, it's not worth the investment. You're putting it.
It's significant.
To 100 or 150,000 into her, and what happens if she wants to do nothing and bum out? He goes, that's not worth an investment. So
Yeah.
I'd prefer to put the money elsewhere.
Yeah.
Whereas I'd say, that's an opportunity I didn't have, and it probably give you should go to work. Then you go to work, and people go, what school do you go to? And you say, oh yeah, I went to Benoit. I go, oh, conversation stops. But everyone else who were at work, they go, oh yeah, I went to this Anglican school, blah, blah. And suddenly the conversation opens.
Yeah.
So it's a conversation, and people do at work, when you say you go to a private school, they do go, there's a conversation going afterwards.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I see that. My husband doesn't see that. And I go, I think she should go to a private school. It's an opportunity that you should give her if you can.
Yeah.
But he goes, what's the opportunity?
Yeah.
So, because both you and Vincent very successful in your own fields. I guess hearing this, you personally probably felt that you didn't have the opportunities that you may have liked.
Yeah.
So you're probably trying to give it to Tara.
Yeah, but that's still the same cycle that our parents went through. Really, they'll push us to be successful because they didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
They sell the 7 Cs just to get here for us to be successful. So they'll push us. So I'm doing the same thing essentially. Really, I know I am.
Well, it's a chat that Alex and I have all the time now. So Olivia's only 3 and Charlie's just 1, but we're starting to think about schools and things like that. And it's, do you push them a little bit to on a certain path, or do you let them make their own decision? And it's like, well, you don't know, and it'd be good to get advice from you because you're kind of going through it now. So, what are you guys leaning to?
You gotta push them. You gotta push them because they're lazy.
They also don't know what they want.
They don't know what they want. They don't know. You ask them, what do you want to be? I don't know. But if they don't know, then you have to give them as much exposure to whatever it is that they may want to might want to take up.
Yeah.
So Tara would not want to go to dance or drama or
take
coding or
piano
anything
lessons.
any of that. But I just push her into all of that. And if she doesn't like it, we can take her out of it. But she has to try, and she has to give it at least a year or a term. And then if she doesn't like it, fair enough, just try something else.
What if Tara says to you one day, hey, Mum, I love French and I want to go to France for 3 years on exchange. Would you give her that opportunity?
Probably not. not in her high school years. After she finished high school, yes, maybe. But I'd probably move to France with her.
Nice. Oh, me too. Can I come?
We're thinking about that.
Okay. Just thought I would ask because I'm like, now that you're a mum, you can kind of understand more about where your mum is coming from, right?
Yeah, I think the difference is that from our generation, we know where to stop, and we know there's a certain respect that we have to give them, whereas that kind of respect to be the individual person doesn't exist in the older generation.
Yeah.
So my last question then, before Alex plays a quick game with you. So with Tara, then we touched on it at the start about Vincent sees himself as Vietnamese. You probably see yourself as more Australian. How are you guys kind of navigating that? Do you want to keep a lot of the cultural things going, or are you guys happy for her to grow up as an Australian?
I mean, for her father, he definitely wants her to, because his family is in Vietnam, so she needs to be able to communicate in Vietnamese.
Yep.
Because that's why we're going to Vietnam in the year, to take her to a country that's predominantly no other language than Vietnamese, and she has to sink or swim, and she would swim, knowing her, she would, and then she would learn the language by herself. But in Australia, we have to force her, and we have to fight.
Yeah.
To have her, like if we ask her something in Vietnamese, she goes, I don't understand what you're talking about, just say it again in English, and it's a constant fight. But if we take her to the culture, and it's normal then for her, and then she might take it up. Hopefully, that's what we're hoping for. For me, because I like languages, so learning another language is not an issue. It's a benefit from, in my point of view, away from the cultural thing. Any language, I tell her, you can learn any language. I don't care, but you have to learn more than one language.
Yeah.
Because you have to expose yourself to more than one culture. And the other night I had a conversation with her. I said, if you don't know about any other culture at all, anything with any other culture, you're pretty much a bogan, really.
That's me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then anything else? So we had this chat as well. So with my mom and Alex's mom as well, just recipes, things like that, which unless they've written down in specific detail, we don't know. And unfortunately, it's probably going to die with them.
Yep.
Is that something, so not just about food, but something that you do want to hang on to? So making sure that all gets passed down?
I don't have a lot, really, of the culture. I like the literature. I can't read Vietnamese, so I can't read any of the Vietnamese literature, poems and things like that. As far as I go is the music.
Yep.
But the music is quite beautiful, really. The lyrics are quite beautiful when you listen to it, because it's more poetic. It's not so straightforward as modern music.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if you've ever... Actually, there's no point in you listening to Vietnamese music if you can't understand it. But even I can't understand it.
Even the translation is not going to make sense, right?
Yeah. Like...
You can translate parts of it. It's never... Because it's so poetic, it's never a full sentence. It's just 3 or 4 words, and you put them all together, it becomes a story.
Yeah. But it's just so hard to wrap my head around Vietnamese music, because when I'm listening, I always like to listen to words that I can understand, and then like they'll be just like, yeah, it's a poem, so they'll say blah blah blah, sing blah blah blah, and I just can't understand what they're saying. I can't understand it.
Okay,
because for me, I know Vietnamese wise, mine is more conversational Vietnamese, so when I listen to the music, I just don't understand, so I'm like, well, why should I listen to it? But I guess you could say the same about K-pop music.
Yeah, well, it just sounds
and
good.
Chinese music, yeah.
But the Vietnamese music was based off, translated from a lot of French music. So because I like French, there was always that parallel. They would sing half in French and then half in Vietnamese. So of course I would want to understand the French part of it, because I was so a fan of it. And then the Vietnamese came along naturally, because you were trying to correlate the 2 words.
So are you sending Tara to Vietnamese school, or she's good enough from hanging around family?
We knew she would need it at the start, so we had her go to a local teacher. She's a student of QT, but she's a teacher. So we sent her to that lady to teach her, but then, of course, they moved on, so we haven't got her to any Vietnamese school. The closest one is, I don't know, in Nala or something like that. It's way too far for us to go on a regular basis. And you got to push her, and everything's a fight, so it's probably not worth a fight at the moment.
Yeah.
Is there a big difference between Vietnamese culture and, let's say, Australian culture, though? Just bringing it back to like the fact that Vincent grew up in Vietnam, so he's got his way of being brought up, and then there's you, who, yes, you're brought up by Vietnamese parents, but then you had to navigate Western culture as well. Is there a big difference, though, in the way that you, let's say, like the way that you...
I mean, not so much. Vincent, yes, but anything one younger than him, maybe not so much, because they've been westernized as well.
Yeah.
And for me now, cause I can't even tell, the line's blurred. I can't tell which part of me is Vietnamese and which part of me is Australian anymore. And it seems like just normal now. So the 2 cultures are totally merged in my mind.
Yeah.
And I think whatever I think, it's what Australians think, or whatever I think is Vietnamese, what Vietnamese think. But I think the most predominant thing is they don't like to be direct. They're very indirect. Whatever in conversations, in their thoughts, or in their requests, they're very indirect. So the most funny thing that I remember going to hang around with the international Vietnamese students was, you ask them, so are you hungry? Do you want to have lunch? 10 minutes later, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? And they never answer. Even if they're hungry, they would never answer directly. They would just take the indirect route. And for me, it's like, I ask you if you're hungry, you say yes or no, or I don't know. There's only 3 options. You don't have to think about it. Or do you need to go to the bathroom? And they don't answer you. And that frustrated me to hell.
It'll be frustrating. But is that something that you've seen as well?
Probably not, because you don't hang around with...
Not enough true
Not
Vietnamese around?
like not in international students, but in saying that, my friends are.
You're pretty indecisive.
I'm trying to think. I'm like,
Yeah, no, they're super indecisive.
I was like, I do have friends who are very indecisive.
But it's in basic functions.
But it could just be the fact that they're just trying to be accommodating to everyone. So they're like, oh no, like it's fine, like
And
we can
then
eat
no
whatever.
decision gets
Whether
made.
no decision ever gets made, because it's like for us, they're just trying to accommodate everyone. So when you ask them a question like, oh, where do you want to eat, or where do you want to go, it's just all very, oh, I don't know. So I always think that's probably just because they're trying to accommodate everyone. But
This is what these people are. They think it's rude to be overt about anything.
interesting. Interesting.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, thank you, Sophia, for that. But before we let you go, we always have this little game called Rapid Fire that we do where we just ask our guest 8 questions. So you just have to choose one, like...
Basically, just choose one or the other, whatever comes to your mind. And it's obviously no rights or wrongs, but just so everyone can get to know you a little bit better.
Yep. All right. So texting or calling?
Texting.
Summer or winter?
Winter.
Interesting. Favorite city?
France. I mean, it's Paris.
Obvious. I was like, I was going to see what you're going to answer with. Nice. Japanese or Korean food?
Korean.
Sam would be happy with that one. I don't think anyone's ever said
one's
Korean.
no one said Korean yet.
Yeah. Friends or How I Met Your Mother?
What? Friends.
Friends or How I Met Your Mother?
Friends.
Did you ever watch How I Met Your Mother?
I think I may have. I can't remember.
Okay.
Actually, I don't like Friends.
Oh my God.
First thing that came to my mind, but I don't like Friends.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
Reality shows or documentaries?
I don't like documentaries, but I absolutely hate reality show.
Do you even watch TV?
Yeah, in COVID I did.
Pause time or rewind time?
Pause time.
Why?
If time goes by too fast.
Fair enough. That's good. That's a good answer.
Yeah.
And all right, well, that's the end of Rapid Fire. But let us, it's good. I'm so glad to have you on here with us, and just being able to tell us your stories and things like that. But I want to know, like, what's next for you? Like, what are your goals?
My goal is retirement.
And how's that looking?
On track. For the next 5 years.
You spoke a lot about languages, Sophia. Is there any... What can you speak at this point? So it's English, Vietnamese, French. Is there anything else is another language you want to learn in the near future, or you're happy to just brush up on those?
Yeah, I did Japanese as well, but when I went to Japan, it helped because I could say numbers still, but that was about it. Language, no, my brain's dead for languages now. Maybe Tibetan, because I need to read stuff in Tibetan one day.
Interesting. Nice.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if you can speak. Would a lot of people speak Tibetan other than...
The monks and the nuns.
A lot of people, no,
Probably not
really.
But it would probably help with the mind science and that, because then you don't have to listen to the translations.
Yeah, because you can go back to the sources to really, because a lot of things are lost in translation, so you can read the actual sightings and text itself, and at least you don't have an error in understanding the concept.
Oh, sounds good. Well, yeah, thanks again for the time, and thanks for the stories. It was really interesting to hear, and hopefully you learned a little bit more about yourself in some ways, but I definitely learned so much about you, so thank you very much.
It's definitely an eye-opener, so thanks, Sophia, for coming on.
Do you even?
Yeah.
I think you just have to be confident with yourself, really. I think that's how I survived.
Yeah. Thanks.
That's good advice.
Yeah.